When I was a kid, I got called out a lot. Now, that might be a southern phrase, but maybe you experienced this too. Particularly at school, the principal enjoyed spending time with me. And right in the middle of a class session, I would get called out to spend time one-on-one with the principal in the office. Oh, what? Oh, I'm putting a positive spin on this, right? I think he missed me. We'd go weeks sometimes. He'd be doing really good, and suddenly he'd have an aching to have a personal conversation with Kerry. It was delightful, I think. I may have caused him to get hazard pay. I don't know. I was just kind of rascally, right? I wasn't that bad of a kid. Maybe unbelievable. As a kid, when you get called out, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. When the Bible tells us we get called out, it's the exact opposite of that. It's a good thing. Peter tells us in this passage that by the grace of God, because of our being alienated from God, because of what Jesus has done, by his grace and by his mercy, he has called us to himself, and he's called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. And now he wants us to be those who, in his light, call back into the darkness and tell them about God. It really is that simple. He's called us out to call back in, to tell them about who did this great thing for us, and he can do that same great thing for them. So Peter gives us 4 things that are conduct for the called out. First, you need to embrace your new identity. And aren't we tired of hearing about identity, right? You can identify as anything. You put on the right kind of shirts and you can identify as a Penn State fan. Now ask John about that later. If he's in the parking lot, don't haunt John. It's your story. Anyway, ask him his story about being an alumni who doesn't really identify as a Penn State guy. Anyway, people identify as anything. Let me tell you, if you're confused about any part of your identity, maybe it's because of just, identify as someone who's a believer, and then I see my own conduct and say, wow, I'm not sure about that. If you have trusted Jesus and he has called you and you've responded by grace, you have a new identity. You're one of God's chosen people. The language here is staggering. Imagine a Gentile growing up around Jews, and the Jews have told them all their lives, we're the chosen people, we're the apple of his eye, we're his holy nation. We are all of that, and you ain't. And suddenly, the offer is extended to anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord and can be saved. And now we get to be called, of all things, a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. This is not a geopolitical thing. This is not Israel then. It's not America now. This is about the people of God, his people brought together as a nation from all of the nations. A holy nation, cleaned up cups. We're a people for his own possession. If you struggle with knowing who you are in God's eyes, may I have the joy of reminding you this morning, you're his. It is his doing. And by grace, there's no undoing there. Look at how you can identify today. It's like a new Israel. We've been called out to be called in to be part of his people. I bet some of you can help me finish part of this song. We're only going to sing a little bit. You ready? Sing along with Uncle Kerry. Here we go. Praise him, tell of his. Oh my. Okay. I do this in multiple churches in the district. You win. Yeah, tell of his excellent greatness. I don't know who wrote the song, but they stole the lyrics from right here. Thankfully, praise him. Tell of God's excellent greatness. You know the beginning thing of what it means? Abe's doing a good job in Sunday school. We've got one more week. Get here early and catch the last part of how to be a witness for Jesus. It just really boils down to telling people about the greatness of God. Right? If you got a brand new car, man, you can tell somebody all about that thing because it's the coolest, greatest, and whatever. Right? God has called us to himself, and we know who we were, who we weren't, and he's made us his children. So, do you know that God is good? somebody, hey, tell me about God. He's good. Do you know that He is gracious? You look in the mirror and say, oh man, He's gracious. You tell them, say, look, not only is He good, but He loves even the likes of me. Do you know that He's holy? You tell them that. That He created the heavens and the earth, but He still knows us and calls us by name. And none of us have gotten lost in the shuffle. You tell people that. It's true of them as well. He knows them. A bird can't drop from the sky or a tree without Him knowing it, and they're more important than little bitty birds that are just worth a nickel or a dime in the world. Your Father counts them more important than birds. And the proof is, you know, that the proof of that is that God sent His only Son to die on the cross for our sins. And so you just tell people, say, man, I know He loves you. That's why we have this cross obsession as Christians. It's not just a decorative thing we do to look cool. It's a meaningful symbol. It tells me that God is still demonstrating His love for you, because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Do you know that? Do you know that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son? Say with me that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. You just tell people that. That's remarkably deep, wonderful, rich, biblical, God-honoring truth and theology. You have been called out by God to embrace your new identity as a person, His people, on mission, calling back in of His excellent greatness. And then know your place. And I heard that as a kid too. It might be the Southernism, I don't know. Hey, boy, know your place. And they weren't saying, welcome to the club. It's kind of like, hey, this is not your place. You felt that increasingly in this culture, haven't you? Really, for us as believers, we're kind of coming out of denial. We have thought we really fit in, belong here, because the nation has this Christian heritage, and we feel like we kind of fit here. But the truth is, whatever nation we're a part of, we're secondary citizens. Our primary citizenship is in heaven. So really, it's really know your place or lack thereof. If someone's an alien to a land, they're not from around there, you're an alien. If someone is a stranger to a place, you're not from around there. Even if you've lived it, you're a stranger. If someone is a sojourner just passing through, that's who we are. That's why you don't feel at home anymore here. Maybe we've falsely felt more at home than we ought to have. Maybe it's a good thing that we're being consistently reminded that, man, this ain't my home anymore. Wonderful. And you know what? I don't mean this in any way like, but go ahead and read that. If you've not embraced the homesick feeling for heaven and the sadness that you don't feel at home in your home anymore, grieve that. Seriously. Because that means you're facing the reality. That wherever you are as a child of God, heaven's your home. This isn't. So that might be sad for us. Does Jesus know what that feels like? He came unto His own, and His own threw Him a big party. And they said, wow, welcome back. And you say, no, we know the Bible a little better than that. What's John write about Jesus? He came into the things that were His very own. And His very own did not receive Him not. Received Him not. Jesus knows what it's like to be part of a family that thinks, literally, they thought Jesus was crazy. You remember the story? A big crowd of folks teaching, and circle of the disciples here and all around. His family couldn't even get to Him. They sent a message and said, could you tell Him to come on out because we'd like to take Him home. We don't know if food's got to Him or he's got sunstruck or something, but he's out of his mind and we'd like to take Him home to protect Him and save the family name. Did you tell our boy to get out here? And Jesus said, I really will tell you who my family is. It's those who do the will of God. His own family. Some of you have come to know Jesus, and He has made you, if you come to know Jesus, you're a new creature. Sometimes it's more evident than others because of the external junk, right? Some of you have laid aside immoral living of all sorts. And some of your families are kind of glad for that, but they kind of still begrudge that you walk with Jesus. It's an amazing thing. You would think they'd be only ecstatic that you're not doing that junk you used to that disrupted your whole family. And all they seem to communicate to you is just keep that stuff to yourself. Quit shoving Jesus down our throat. I learned a phrase at our church in Marion where the guy said, people who are kind of too forceful with evangelism, they call it shoving the dove. I've never heard that before. I probably shouldn't enjoy it, but it's very picturesque, isn't it? Shoving the dove. Don't shove the dove. Some of your family members, it's amazing. They remind you, you're a stranger here. Jesus can relate. In fact, we can call upon the one who would come to Jesus. He's the living stone. He was rejected by men. He was chosen by God and precious to him. Jesus knew rejection. So when you feel the pain of when you choose to walk with Jesus and people walk away from you, and it does hurt, and you know your place or lack thereof, you can take that to Jesus. He's not going to shame you for feeling that way. He's going to say, I know. I understand. On the cross, his closest friends fled. He gets it. And you feel lonely. We're not home yet, Stephen Curtis Chapman saying. We're not home yet. It is the great adventure. We're not home yet. What's the conduct for the called out? Know your new identity. Know your place or lack thereof. And then say no to sinful desires. One of the things that happens when we come to know Jesus, and we have new eyes, and we see stuff that used to thrill us that now disgust us. We see stuff that used to humor us that is now appalling to us and to God. And we want to kind of go out and we want to start speaking against all kinds of stuff and sin. And Peter says, hey, let me tell you where you probably should start. Before you start grabbing a microphone and denouncing all of their sin, how about we first grab a mirror and deal with your own stuff? Nah, it's a whole lot easier to talk about their stuff, right? Right? It's a whole lot easier just kind of get on Facebook and blast them all. Whether it's those kids today or whatever. Oh, and by the way, people love getting punched in the nose by Christians. No. Who does? We've tried the Engaged-Exile bit. It ain't working. We want to be engaged exiles, and we engage first with starting with humility and saying, can you believe the junk that's still in here? Can you believe all the stuff in the cup still? See, this reminds me, one, of my need for his righteousness, which he's given. It also reminds me of my need for humility. Because I do feel distinct from the world, but that's the doing of God, but I sadly can still relate. Somebody struggling with addiction stuff. I may not have that kind of addiction, but I got desires of me that still. I came to know the Lord when I was 7 or 8. How am I still dealing with this stuff? Am I the only one in here who's been walking with Jesus for almost 50 years and still is embarrassed by the junk inside? It keeps me dependent. It should keep me humble. It should keep me fighting for ongoing growth through the Word, through the people of God. It keeps me able to relate to anything out there. Paul writes, he goes, man, the world does these things, but hey, don't get big-headed, because and such were some of you. But you were washed. I didn't have anything to do with that. You were redeemed. I didn't have anything to do with it. My new standing's never based on me. The only thing I contributed to salvation was my need for it. And so I need to look inside. And the junk that's in there, in fact, this assumes a vigorous temptation from within, hand-to-hand combat with my sin nature. Keep away from fleshly desires that do battle against the soul. Abstain. They wage war. Football season, right? coming up. I tell people the district goes from Penn State to Ohio State. Well, here they are, right here, the Buckeye boys and girls. And the rest of us, the Penn State people. Matt goes, football? Sportsing? Those big guys, 250, 300, 350 pounders, right? Line up against each other. Someone says Omaha or something, and then snap, and give them a piece of leather, and then 500-pound collisions, 600-pound collisions happen right there, right? One of the ways that Paul describes in Galatians the battle we have against our sinful junk is that we set ourselves in opposition to God, and we need to instead of indulging in the fruit of the flesh, we need to give way to the fruit of the Spirit. So there's this pitched combat. This is not pee-wee flag football inside, a cute little battle. This is hard-hitting stuff. My sin nature wanting to render me useless, so full of guilt and shame that I'm not going to call back into the darkness. Or when I do call into, they go, oh, and you are who? We are to say no to our sinful desires. Hey, and by the way, it's both discouraging to younger believers and encouraging to young believers to know that some of us old heads are still dealing with junk in our life. So we need to be honest about that. Here's one, okay? There's some 30-year-olds in here who walk with Jesus and look up to the 60, 70-year-olds in here and say, I can't wait to be that age and never have to struggle with these matters again. I heard a chuckle of reality. We need to prepare them to say it's a lifelong battle. By God's grace, He can get it easier and better in certain areas, and then something else will crop up. And then you watch the news one more time. Then you pick up the newspaper one more time, or then you just look in the mirror, or you're just running late again one more time. Younger believers, I tell you that not to discourage you, but to ask that you should go with freedom to older believers and say, I bet you probably can relate. You don't have to answer that. Could you please pray for me because I'm still struggling with this? Hey, and older believers, we could do that as well. We could go to some of our younger believers in Christ and say, I could use your prayer. I don't want to say specifically what it is or it's this. Could you pray for me about that? I'm tired of dealing with that. But in the process of when we deal with our sins in community and with humility, God does something, I think, additional in us. There's an ongoing sanctification, and I think a humility that then makes us even more relatable when we go back into the world. We're never in any way touting our own greatness. We're telling of His excellent greatness. That He is still patient, even with the likes of someone like me. So conduct for the called out. Embrace your new identity. God's chosen people on mission. Know your place, or lack thereof. Start with saying no to your sinful desires. And then go out and live a good Christian life. You don't start by grabbing the microphone. You grab the shovel, the towel and basin. You live such good lives right there among the pagans, convincingly Christian. Engaged-Exiles. I love your tank tent. How many churches have a tent they set up that was for tank repairs? I think that's cool. I think what's even better is that someone in this church who has the connection with that Boy Scout troop that owns that tent. And that this church has a strong, good relationship with a Boy Scout troop through some ones in this church to be engaged, loving, and supportive, and encouraging back to them and thankful in a public way. Your car crew is coming up this Saturday. How fun is that? Who doesn't want a fun event to come to? I think there's free hot dogs. I got plans, buddy. Otherwise, I'd be hanging out all week. Thank you, Lord, He's leading. Okay. Angela's coming. What a neat friend. What a great gal. Enjoy her. She'll enjoy you. But you're inviting folks. Hey, come on, enjoy the cars, enjoy your prizes and games. I love your artwork. I always want to call it artwork. Your artwork. For aunts and uncles, the aardvark, right? What a powerful, simple way of saying we love our community. Come on, you're welcome. You've even this year, every Wednesday, I think it is, ramped it up and organized in a very, still low-key, wonderful way of being on mission to utilize that. On campus, off campus, at work. People find out some big news story. The next morning, they're baiting you to find your response to how you're going to respond to this thing. Instead of getting inflamed like everyone else, you're centered in Jesus. You're concerned about what's happening there, but you're not going to lose your ability to speak to Jesus because you get so sucked into passionate things that aren't eternal. Because you're obsessed with the eternal. Living convincingly Christian lives. And you know what that'll get you? Lied about. Don't you love the wonderful beauty? Thank you, Peter, for that reminder. Though you live such, he says, live such good lives, so that when they speak against you as evildoers. I'm sorry, say that part again. Live such good lives, so that when they speak against you as evildoers. Matt and I have a lot in common. One of us, we don't leave. We leave that to other people. This math don't add up. I don't have to do it. This math doesn't add up. I'm living a godly Christian life, and they're calling me all kinds of, they're lying about me. That adds up. He came into his own received him not. Only one person ever got it all completely perfect. It got him killed. Why do we expect living like Jesus is going to get us laurels and wreaths? It'll get you slandered. It's promised. You want to claim a promise from God? Here's your promise for today. Lord, I'm claiming the promise. The more I live for you, the more they're going to abuse me. Amen. Yeah, that's true. In this world, you'll have tribulation. But be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. Be of good cheer. So when they speak again, so they find out, where do you go to church? Lanse Evangelical. Oh, you're one of those evangelicals. I know that you're kind. Y'all hate these kind of people, and you hate those kind of people. Oh, I've read all about you. Before you get a chance to let them know or display your love for them, they're making assumptions about you. So we can withdraw and get angry and strike back, or we say, tough sled here, but I get to outlive my detractors. I know what the soil's like. By God's grace, we're going to keep tilling, planting, and watering till He calls me on to other soil or says shake the dust off. But if I'm in this person's life and they think that of me, I get to act so much like Jesus that after a while they go, wait a minute, you're a friend of sinners. I thought you hated those kind of people, but I saw you were friends with him or her. You're kind of confusing me here. Folks, wonderful news. The world's assuming a lot of horrible things about you. Great! We get to be so contrary to their assumptions, it'll shock them. How cool is that? That's not a negative, that's a positive. So they're assuming the worst, they're speaking trash about you, but you know what happens? They watch your life, they get a phone call, there's somebody in the family's got a crisis, they come to your door and say, you pray, right? Many of you have had this happen. They treat you like dirt at work or an extended family, but when there's a crisis that comes up, who do they call? Who do they lean on? In our flesh at that moment can say, oh no. After what you've done, we go, no, Lord Jesus, they have abused and lied about me, but you understand this. Help me now, Lord Jesus, to say, forgive them, Lord. They don't know what to do it. And to love them. Be convincingly Christian. That's what it means to live like Christ. Abused people who keep keeping love on folks. Right in the middle of when they're treating you worse. Expect accusation. Follow the example of Jesus. You're looking forward to go back to work tomorrow now, right? Well, we should. that area in which we find they've rejected us and rejected Jesus, maybe that did not give us a fair shake, we keep wanting to shine. Yeah, I think a really good song, wouldn't it? There's something about this little light of mine. I'm going to let it shine. They've not heard it. I can pretend to make this up. I'm not going to hide it. Watch this one. We're going to not hide it under a bushel basket. That's a good add-on, right? Let it shine till Jesus comes. They've heard this? Maybe Family Bible Week or somewhere along the way. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it because I'm afraid and shine it brighter even though I'm still. Though I'm afraid, I will trust in thee. It may cost you. You may work in a situation where they find out your beliefs about certain things and they will not promote you. They may never say why, but they assume you're going to mistreat a whole section of population because of your convictions, and so therefore, or they call you into human resources. You may not get promotion, you could get hindered, you can get blackballed. Well, you believe this, therefore X. It's not fair. And Jesus says, I know, it's not fair. Ask God to forgive them and just keep loving them to the very end. Tertullian, 200 AD, says, it's our care that help us, our practice of loving kindness that brands us in the eyes of our many opponents. Only look, they say, look how they love one another. Early Christians were known for going in when there were diseases and caring for people, even if it cost them their lives, and it all did. Early Christians were known for going and rescuing abandoned babies. We don't want a girl. We don't want another kid. Rescuing abandoned babies and raising them as their very own. Early Christians were known for going to the helpless and taking care of them, of strangers, of aliens, and who were being shunned, and showing them the love of Jesus. Not necessarily debating the political aspects of why someone's here, but saying, by God's grace, this person is here. I get to show them the love of Jesus. And then finding out some of them know Jesus, and they get to teach me a thing or two as well. In your notes there, in your bulletin, worship God. What do you call this thing? Bulletin, okay. Why do I have to make that complicated? At the very bottom there, it's a gift. At the very bottom is a verse there from Jesus that will make a really cool song. I might have mentioned it already. Let's say this. Let's read this verse out loud together a couple of times, please. Okay, in the same way? This is Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, teaching his disciples. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Let's read that again. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Lanse Free Church, thank you for being on mission. May I urge and nudge you to stay on mission. As it becomes increasingly comfortable to withdraw and be quiet, we want to engage all the more. Find every civic opportunity that's looking for volunteers and infiltrate. If you've got people in the church who are already helping in civic organizations, find out who they are. How can you help support them so they know this person is got a team behind them? Little Leagues and Scouts or whatever it would be in this community that you would say, wow, we can help support them. And be there in the name of Jesus. Not only on things that when people come to us, but then when we go to them in the name of Jesus